Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface on the Alpha for Battle for Azeroth. And yesterday there was a brand new build applied to the Alpha and it brought with it the preliminary testing for Azerite Armor. And Azerite Armor is going to work in conjunction with your Heart of Azeroth, the necklace that's going to be with you for the entirety of the next expansion. And as this necklace gets stronger and stronger, if you have pieces of Azerite armor, it's going to unlock their latent abilities, and you're going to be able to choose some extra gubbins to make your character more powerful. Now, from what we can gather so far, there are going to be 3 pieces of artifact armor. There's going to be head, shoulders, and titty bags. That's chest piece to the lay person. And they're not going to be RNG drops. So you're not going to just kill anything in the world and it has the opportunity to drop. No. The pieces of Azerite armor are going to be specific to certain mobs. And then you go out and farm the mob and hope that you get the Azerite armor as a drop. Because all mobs have loot tables, and depending on what loot is designated when it's killed, will obviously display what you're going to get as a piece of reward. So you can go out and specifically farm for these Azerite pieces: head, shoulders, chest. So with that said, let's have a look at the first piece that they've given us, and let's see how it's going to sort of come together. Now, things that we have to be aware of from the get-go are the character at the moment is level 110. It's the basic character. And the chest piece I've got here is item level 185. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be my end game chest piece. My chest piece is going to change, as are my shoulders, as is my headpiece. So it looks like there are going to be different pieces of Azerite armor depending on which stage of the game you're in. So this one that we're going to look at today is for leveling, and then of course you'll probably have a stronger piece as you get through the leveling process, and then end game, of course, you're going to have what I would imagine would be completely different pieces. What isn't established yet is whether or not the abilities on the different pieces will alternate and change the higher in levels that you get. So will a top level piece have completely different abilities to, let's say, this one that we're going to look at in a moment? Or is it going to be the same but with scaled stats? So, without further ado, let's have a look. So if I right-click onto this, don't worry about the appearance of this. This is just a bog-standard interface. It will tweak and it will be changed to look much more appealing at the end game. But, with that said, what I will say is, this is the common denominator. This is the common denominator of what you will get. You will get a very simplistic talent tree applied to the piece of gear. There's nothing really more special than that. And if we have a look at the various talents on there, you are very limited for choice at this very moment in time. For instance, the very first piece that we have to look at is this ability here, Champion of Azeroth. Contributing to the death of an enemy of Azeroth heals you for X amount and grants you 26 versatility for 1 minute, stacking up to 2 times. So if I kill 2 enemies within a minute, I'd have 56 versatility for a minute. But after this one, which is clearly designated to go across any spec, the first row becomes spec specific: Affliction, Demonology, and Destruction. So if you play a very specific spec, you really only have 2 choices on this top level. Or if you bounce through specs, because at the moment, when you make your decision on what talent you're going to go for, what ability you're going to choose, there's no way at the moment to reverse that. So if you play multiple specs for different occasions, you play, let's say, Affliction in PvP, but you play Destruction in PvE, and you want to have both the Affliction and the Destruction talents, then you're going to need 2 pieces of artifact gear at the moment. So it's very weird and about how it's working at the moment. Obviously, Blizzard are looking for feedback right now. So all these things could be subject to change. You might be able to adapt the ability. But if you can adapt the ability, that will also cheapen the piece of gear that you're wearing. Because what's the point of having choice when you can choose everything? So there's lots of little pros and cons here. But let's just, for argument's sake, look at the Warlock ones. For starter. Number 1, Racking Brilliance. Passive ability for Affliction. Every other soul shard your agony generates also increases your intelligence by 79 for 6 seconds. This one is going to be for Demonology. Shadow's Bite. When your summoned Dreadstalkers fade away, they increase the damage of your Shadow Bolt by 59 for 8 seconds. And then for Heavy Rain, brilliant video game by the way, for Destruction. When your Rain of Fire damages 3 or more targets, you gain 97 haste for 8 seconds. But after the first rank, and this is what the rank is based off, the level of your Heart of Azeroth. So once you go around gathering Azerite, and this gets leveled up, once it's hit level 4, you're going to unlock this next tier of abilities. But instead of becoming spec-specific, they're now becoming generic, as we'll see when I look at a healer and a tank a little bit later on. So we have Blood Siphon, for example, increases your mastery by 34 and your leech by 17, so it's a very basic stat increase. Gut Ripper, your damaging abilities have a chance to deal X amount of physical damage to the target. Gut Ripper occurs much more often against targets below 30% health. So it's a good execute, really. And then Elemental Whirl. Your damaging abilities have a chance to grant you Elemental Whirl, increasing your critical strike, haste, mastery, or versatility, so it's just one of those, by 97 for 10 seconds. That might be specific to the spec that you're playing, or it could be completely random, unknown at the moment. So the first level, you've had 2 choices, really, depending on spec play. Second level, you've got 1 of 3 choices. And then the next level, you've only got 1 of 2 choices, which is Vampiric Speed. Vampiric Speed, when an enemy you damage dies and heals you for X damage, X health, you gain 60 speed for 6 seconds. And then Resounding Protection, every 30 seconds, you gain an Absorb Shield for X amount for 30 seconds. So this is your defensive level. And then finally, top level, Azerite Empowered, increases the item of this item, imagine, increases the item level of this item by 5. So currently, this chest piece is 185 item level. If you get to level 10 on that to unlock this, it will become 190. Now, I know we're in the preliminary stages of testing, and this is the feedback. And when I sort of like went through these abilities, my first reaction to this was just, nah. None of these abilities really seem that exciting. Now, I do appreciate that this is the leveling up one, but are you really going to be sticking with that piece of armor as you're leveling up to get to rank 10 to get 5 item levels to take it to 190? That doesn't seem very feasible. The likelihood is you'll probably go into a dungeon and get a much higher item level piece, which will swap that out almost immediately. So talents like this seem very weird and out of place, especially if we're talking about it from a leveling perspective. But let's just, for argument's sake, say we are top level. Are these abilities going to be different depending on the piece of gear that drops? Or are they going to be variations of what you see now? So if I got a top level piece that was item level, for argument's sake, 300, 350, is this going to say every other soul shard your agony generates also increases your intellect by 278 for 6 seconds? Do you see where I'm coming from here? Or are we going to get completely different pieces with completely new and exciting abilities? So that's one thing we don't know yet. So this one piece that we've been granted doesn't really tell the true story of how Azerite Armor is going to be shown to us, going to be displayed to us, and just comes across as very underwhelming indeed. All these abilities, although, you know, they are going to help your character, they just seem very nah. They just don't feel very exciting. Increase your item level by 5. Whoop-de-doo. You know, I'm not trying to come across as ungrateful or anything, but when you had your artifact weapon, at least the starting phases of farming artifact power were okay. Because every time you got the artifact power, you were hoping to unlock, first of all, new just little abilities, which increased your power. But then, of course, you got to a big one at the end, which gave you a really cool boost. Something really unique and interesting happened there. So that farm of the artifact power wasn't too bad when you were going through that. And then, of course, it fell off a tree once Concordance came along, and it just became a boring grind. But that's not the preliminary area's fault. With this, I feel as if, looking at this, do I really want to invest in another AP grind? Because Azerite power is just artifact power, essentially. It's just been slightly refined. It goes immediately onto your Heart of Azeroth, as opposed to in your inventory as an item to click on. And it's not spec specific, it goes across the board. And as you can see, levels everything up across the board. So, do I really want to go through another grind just to get a few tweaky passives? I certainly don't feel that. I don't feel like, oh my god, am I really going to be grinding for this? And also, just looking at the abilities that we see here, I'm reading them, and I'm saying to myself, these should really be profession abilities, or something along those kind of lines. They should be profession abilities which just make professions feel a little bit more interesting. Why should jewel crafting just add basic stats to your character? Why can't you put a jewel in that increases your speed by 60 for 6 seconds and heals you if you've contributed? Why can't there be something a little bit different in that regard and just make professions that wee bit more exciting to actually make you think, do you know what? I should really level up my professions because I can get some cool little gems or cool little enchants, or even, you know, leatherworking and stuff like leatherworking, going Final Fantasy 14 here. You know, if you're going skinning and stuff like that, stuff that you can apply to your gear to give these abilities. They just don't feel particularly gripping or exciting, just very basic indeed. But of course, this is just with what they've shown. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump to a healer class, and I'm also going to jump to a tank class. And I think you're going to be quite intrigued by what you see when I show off their piece of Azerite Armor. Now, I've jumped to a chamois healer. And of course, the front row was the row that was specific to specializations. But if we look at the very first ability, it's identical to the one that the Warlock had. And then you've got your elemental one, then you've got your other one, and then you've got your healing one. So when we go on to the second row, we have Gut Ripper again, we have Elemental Whirl again, and then we only have the tweak. Because chamois has a healing spec, bang, you have something different. But again, on the next row, Vampiric Speed, exactly the same as the Warlock one. Resounding Protection, and then Azerite Empowered, the increase of 5 stat levels. What I'm trying to get at here is, apart from this first row, which offers a little bit of diversity based off your spec, suddenly all these artifact... this is the same thing after all. All these Azerite armor pieces are essentially generic, and they don't really stand out via your class. So apart from just a couple of tweaks here or there, they are identical. And just for anyone that was wondering, all you have to do is just click on to the ability that you want. You just click on bang, and then it locks in. You can't unlock it from there. So let's just jump now to a tank class. I've chosen Demon Hunter because Demon Hunter is very clean. It's only got 2 specs, 1 DPS, 1 tank. So even though you're 1 short on the first level, you've still really got just as many choices. The overall one, again, that everything has, and then your spec-specific DPS and tank. And then on the next level, that's when the tanking ability comes in. Taking damage grants you 17 dodge for 3 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. And then we go back to Gut Ripper, Elemental Whirl, Vampiric Speed, Resounding Protection, and Azerite Empowered. So again, very kind of generic stuff. So just as a piece of leveling up gear, sure, these stats are going to help a little bit. But with that said, it just feels as if as soon as you go into a dungeon, the likelihood is if you've got a chest, shoulders, or head, then you'd pull out something stronger already. So the relevance of Azerite Armor for leveling could be all over the shop. How long am I actually going to hold on to this chest piece? In the first dungeon that I go to, am I going to get a 220 item level piece in a couple of levels time, for instance? And this becomes redundant. So for leveling up, it's all over the place. But at top level, is this the kind of thing that they're going to go for? Or are we going to see something completely different? Are we going to see at X level, whatever level that's going to be, this ability is going to be really cool? You know, your X does Y and do, and you're going to be like, oh, wow, isn't that really interesting? But we just don't know the design philosophy that Blizzard have in mind here. So for showing us this piece, that's all well and good, but they should have really have given a top level piece as well to test at the same time, and that way we could have compared what a leveling piece of Azerite Armor would be and looks like compared to a top end piece of what an Azerite piece of armor would look like. And then you could actually compare the two and start to see where these differences might take effect. Or if the design philosophy is just to go alongside this right here, which is basic stat increases across the board, which are going to help, but to me just aren't very exciting at all and could be positioned in other areas of the game with, say, professions. And leave this to be a little bit more sexy and a little bit more exciting. But yeah, so first impressions of the Azerite Armor, pretty underwhelming to say the least. All well and good, but we need to see the tasty stuff. We need to see the top end stuff to see if that is exciting and that is the interesting element to the game. Because if they have this same philosophy for a top level piece, then I think the grind with Azerite power is going to be very dull and bore people very quickly indeed, because trying to grind up your Heart of Azeroth to get kind of, you know, very bog standardy increases, which of course may help the character but just don't come across as particularly interesting. I think people would, you know, rather be doing something else, to be quite honest with you. But there you go. There's my thoughts and feelings. So I would be interested to see what your first impressions were of the Azerite Armor and where you potentially hope it will lead towards top level stuff. So comment section down below, let me know what you think. But I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do get a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Click the bell icon as well, please, so you get guaranteed notifications when I release videos. On top of that, I've got my social media and Twitch for live streaming in the description box down below, and I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now.